The iron sting, native to a distant shore, once hung from the waist of its seafaring bearer. A slender and elegant blade, it stood out amidst the roughness and chaos of the sea. When curious folk inquired, the captain deflected their questions. Rumors quickly spread about the blade's origins. Some said it was won in battle against pirates, others that it was loot from a raid. But when the red evening clouds set in, and the sails dropped for the night, the chief mate would gently polish his blade, reminiscing about his old life in the Wind Kingdom, the time he spent roaming as a martial nomad, reminiscing about a girl from his hometown, a love that ended too soon, and a promise to meet again. While rarely acknowledged, the Whiteblind was, in fact, a foreign bladesmith's labor of love. The bladesmith knew himself to be dull of wits and was anxious that his blade would follow suit. Hence, he worked painstakingly on sharpening and balancing this beloved blade. Sparks flew as the bladesmith worked through many sleepless nights. The sword was recast and retempered countless times, all the while his mind was consumed with the hope of his lover's return, as well as his untold anxiety for her well-being.
After the war is over,
the bladesmith would briefly ponder every time he paused for breath.
Will this blade still be of use to her? Will she even make it home safely?
These thoughts would linger in his mind for just a moment before he cast them aside and refocused his full attention on the blade. Indulging irresolvable anxieties was a futile endeavor. Better to focus his faculties on creating the perfect welcome home gift. Finally, the day came when the triumphant expeditionary force entered the city gates, their monstrous foes defeated at last. But the bladesmith hadn't had time to carve his lover's name onto the blade's body. With no time to lose, he grabbed the sword and rushed to meet his lover. Unfortunately, what would transpire next was to be an unbearable anticlimax. As the warrior removed her helmet, long soft hair flowed down. She was growing her hair out, and hence would never need to wield a blade ever again for the rest of her days. Meanwhile, she had brought her lover a gift too, a shiny new hunting bow.
Romance is dead. I wasted all these years making you this great sword and now you don't even need it.
The bladesmith was thoroughly miserable and would not stop complaining about the unfairness of it all. But his efforts had by no means been in vain. At least he had finally succeeded in making a blade of the very finest quality. Unlike the martial artists of Liyue, those from other lands are masters of the art of surprise, skilled at developing ingenious new tricks. The Crescent Pike is designed to exploit fatal flaws. Like a needle, it slips between the gaps in an opponent's armor, weaving its way past any defenses. The creator of the Crescent Pike was said to be able to visualize them in life itself. As if drawn by some mystical power, the pike would fly from her hand towards her opponent's fatal flaws.
Perhaps all that lives wait willingly for death.
So thought the creator, who could see that which was fatally undefended in any living thing, yet had no such fatal flaws in her own life. That is, until she found music, and through music found love, and in love she found her very own fatal flaw. In the end, the pain of finality, which had pierced her heart like a needle, finally brought the witch to a realization.
Fatal flaws are born of a fear of death. The fear of death is born of having things and people to care about. Oh, how I wish to see him but one more time. How I wish to hear his song. If I should survive, I shall certainly treat him.
The title page of the Mappa Mare reads as follows. Love ye the sea breeze and the ocean currents, for it is the wind and water that carry the seafaring ones to their destination. Fear ye all the more that the same sea breeze and ocean currents unbridled can tear apart even an iron vessel. To woo the ocean and calm her temper, one must explore every hidden reef, every prevailing wind, and every place where whales make their home. These words appear in the yellowing pages of countless seafarers' notebooks, infatuated by the might of the sea. In foreign lands, seasoned sailors refer to the ocean as their lover, and use female pronouns to address the cold, saline waters. Perhaps they do so because of the ocean's temperamentality, or its vast bosom, or perhaps it is because they are drawn to the romance of sailing away on an adventure. Like the ocean, this chart answers to no master. Like the seafarers, it harbors the romantic dream of exploring every corner of the world. The foreign scholar modified the compound bow, installing a mechanical pulley that increased the strength of its shots. He had no heart for violence and bore no desire to see blood drawn, but mesmerized by the curve of a drawn bow and the quiver of arrows in flight, he was driven to transform the compound bow and make it more powerful. The scholar knew from the onset of this endeavor what his creation would become: a tool of war that would bring nothing but death. But he was lost in his pursuit to perfect both structure and materials, and there was no stopping him as he fled this reality. Though one day, the bow was taken up by a soldier, who promptly shot down a wild goose.
"This is the one,"
said the heartless soldier, commending the weapon in his hands as the final cry of the bird he had murdered pierced his heart, just as the arrow had pierced its own. Yun Hui, head of the House of Yun's family forge, approached renowned craftsman Han Wu. With the combined expertise from both sides, Han Wu drew up designs for a new series of weapons, simply named the prototypes. The very first sword made following this design already had the feel of a formidable weapon. While trying out the sword at Mount Tianheng, Han Wu accidentally dropped it on the ground. The sword responded by unleashing a swirling tornado of energy that cut a 12-inch deep hole into the solid mountain rock. Han Wu took it as a sign from the heavens. "This sword shall be named Rancour, Destroyer of Rocks." The sword shakes mountains from their foundations and possesses the power of 1,000 peaks at its tip. It became the basis for all subsequent swords made in Liyue. The first great sword built using the new design was unusually understated in its final appearance. The underwhelming sight of dull, blotchy gold masked the weapon's true strength. While not much to look at, any who cared to try it would discover that it was weighty, but not unwieldy. Han Wu traveled north through the night to hand the sword over to a martial artist who followed the chivalric code. The martial artist inspected the blade closely before trialing it. The blade howled like the wind and, in an instant, decimated the entire bamboo forest. It was a rare sight to behold. The martial artist said to Han Wu, "This blade is endowed with the elegance of antiquity. It is of equal value both as a weapon and an ornament. Such a fine creation possessing both scale and subtlety is worthy of a name like no other. May it be known as the Archaic." Due to its unparalleled strength, this sword became the model for thousands of great swords in Liyue. By the time the abyssal threat was quelled, the remaining troops were few and far between, and each joined the civilian community where they were based. Though peace now prevailed, it sparked a martial arts renaissance that spread through the land. Demands for all kind of weaponry spiked. especially for superior quality items, and manufacturers could not keep pace. To find a solution, Yun Hui and Han Wu conducted intensive research behind closed doors. By the time they emerged, both men's beards had grown by 12 inches. Their new weapon designs were finally ready. It was time to do away with the shackles of the past. The first pole built to the new specifications had a black and gold appearance. The spike at the tip was 2 inches longer than the previous standard. It was a deadly weapon, but one with a composed and commanding presence. It was left to bask overnight in the moonlight. At the first light of dawn, the tip shone with the cold, piercing light of a star against the dim sky. At this ethereal sight, Yun Hui's mind was flooded with memories of his father's glory, for his father's name referred to the stars. Greatly moved, he decided to dedicate the weapon to his father's memory. For this reason, the weapon became known as the Starglitter among later practitioners of the halberd arts in Liyue. After the Great Calamity subsided, sinister forces remained in the world. Thus, people abandoned traditional martial arts and espoused supernatural arts. But the techniques used in catalyst production were antiquated, having remained unchanged for over a century. Thus, the catalysts of that age were fragile and broke on first use. The thaumaturgists flocked to Liyue and pleaded with Yun Hui to design a new type of catalyst for them. Yun Hui proceeded to add a catalyst to the prototypes. The disc is made of wood and rare ore. The core purum in the center was a gift from the thaumaturgists. Core purum is produced by firing core lapis in an urn for 7 days squared, that is, 49 days, and then steeping it in fresh water drawn from a mountain spring for a further 7 days squared. The dual purification of fire and water renders core purum unbreakable, and the thaumaturgists also believe it allows the stone to act as a vessel for primordial cosmic energy. A catalyst with core purum at its core can channel cosmic energy with the turning of the disc. 12 full turns work the energy into its purest form. Yun Hui observed that the core purum had a warm golden glow like that of amber. After discussion with the thaumaturgist, he proposed to name the catalyst Prototype Amber. Therefore, all catalysts made in Liyue were modeled on Yun Hui's prototype. The prototype Crescent is an exceptional longbow that is mainstream among the armed forces. Han Wu employed every trade caravan he could find to bring the resources required to forge this bow. In the end, he chose Q-drania wood, fine steel, and Irminsul branches brought back from the abyss. The result is a beautifully superior bow, sturdy and easy to grip, and cool to the touch. The bow's arc is as beautiful as the crescent moon, albeit a darker shade, like a light moon hanging low amidst a foggy night sky. When an arrow from the bow pierces the clouds, the string's light is thin and cold, reminiscent of an unforgettable moonflow. This resemblance has earned the bow the title of the Crescent. Its beauty captivated the people. There would go on to be no shortage of similarly inspired bows.